We all know someone who can't let go of resentment towards others or towards situations. And maybe that's you. You want to get less frustrated about negative things that fall upon you and want to move on from the past. Families have been destroyed, love stories ended, and friendships have fallen apart due to one small human habit: holding grudges. Even though not holding grudges is just logical. What do we mean by holding grudges? Something negative happened to you and you just can't make peace with it. Grudges are sticky because they often tie into our deep-seated fears and insecurities. They give us a narrative where we are the wronged party, which is always so tempting. We all experience bad situations with people close to us. The truth is that we are all really sensible. We care about what others think of us, how they treat us. We want to be liked, to be loved, and to be treated right. We care that much, and that's a good thing. Do not get rid of it. To stop caring means losing a part of yourself, and you will end up losing that spark in your eyes. I know it hurts. Bad things happen, and you don't want it to happen again. But sometimes, holding a grudge ends up hurting you more. You think the other person's the villain, and the other person thinks the same about you. So you end up suffering and gaining distance until you drift apart. The world is full of misunderstandings, but it's also full of second chances. And to get that second chance, you need to understand why we hold grudges. Usually, resentment starts from a specific or an accumulation of specific situations. Words or actions hurt you and you judge them and make decisions about them. The problem is that we are all really bad at judging, though we love to do it. You would think that living 20 years with a person would make you judge their words or actions correctly, and that's actually not the case. Why? First, the never-ending impression we hold of each other. We all carry an outdated label of each other that we consult every time we interact. Not only are they outdated, but they are usually wrong too. These labels color everything, turning every word and gestures into evidence that everyone is exactly like their label, which, spoiler alert, they probably aren't. So we found ourselves in this wild cycle where we interpret each other's actions based on their labels and we treat them accordingly. And now everyone needs to defend themselves against misjudged caricatures. So we can't really judge, and most of us don't even try. We jump to labels, and that's why we make bad impressions, and that's why the grudges start to accumulate. But it gets spicier. The human mind is really strong. It's extremely common to believe something and interpret everything with this belief, seeing just the things you want to see. So not only our words and our actions will fit perfectly in this little label we invent for ourselves, but doing this repeatedly during years will make that belief so deep it will be really hard to change. So deep, yet it could be so wrong. And that's not the worst. Why? Because of humans' worst nightmares: to be mistaken. Now, being mistaken not once, but thousands of times during years, and being aware that because of your mistaken judgment, you have potentially ruined your relationships is one of the hardest pills to swallow. Which is why, even if people do realize later on that they were mistaken, they might never do something about it. Imagine the horror of discovering that your friend that always makes jokes and smiles is actually masking a depression. Or that your always busy dad was working so hard so you could get a better life. To admit a mistake, especially one marinated over years, means accepting that you've been the villain in your own story. So, knowing all that should be enough for you to be absolutely cautious with extreme decisions based on extreme judgment. If reality doesn't match your pre-made judgment, change your judgment, not the way around. And to do that, you need to observe things. When we receive other people's words or actions, we perceive them as a singular act, but in fact, every word or action are the results of opinions, emotions, and much more. You don't have access to that information, so when you're interpreting words or actions, you will always lack that context. Judging others is easy. Understanding them takes effort. Let go of the need to always be right. So next time, before you decide you figured someone out based on your superb people skills, maybe, just maybe, try asking them first. So how can you let go of that grudge? First, accept that people don't have bad intentions. Even though their actions or words can be interpreted as such, people are actually just like you. And when was the last time you plotted evil? Truth is, most people can't control their emotions, so when we are in a conflict, we end up saying or doing things in the worst manner possible, throwing words and action until something sticks. Having a deep, productive, and sane conversation is actually extremely hard. We are all quite clueless. Attributing malice to other people's words and action is an instinctive reaction, but if you realize that you don't have an ounce of malice in yours and that people are like you, this should lead you to the conclusion that you're seeing just the superficial, without using logic to understand the underlying situation. The second thing to understand to let go of resentment is that we are all pretty ignorant. We barely know what we're doing most of the time, especially when it comes down to dealing with other humans. So don't take it personally. Everyone is quite mediocre. This isn't about you, it's about them, and for them, it's about you. And that's normal. Everyone would love to have so much knowledge about human interactions that they can solve every social problem they have. Getting mad at ignorance is like getting mad at a dog for not understanding quantum physics. Do not attribute malicious intent to ignorance. If it was not their intention, then it just happened. Which leads us to the third thing you need to understand to let go of resentment. You can't let things you don't control affect you. Let's say an earthquake shakes up your life, figuratively or literally. You can't hold a grudge against tectonic plates. Sometimes negative situations are natural disasters of human interaction, unpredictable, unwanted, but ultimately not anyone's fault. There is nothing you could have done, you just have to accept that it happened and move on. At the end of the day, you need to do what's beneficial for you, and not being resentful is just that. So forget and move on, not for other people, but for yourself. We also hold grudges as a form of learning, to not suffer that negative situation again in the future. But you can learn without holding grudges. In fact, you need to. For example, if a close friend of yours betrayed you, you could hold a grudge against them, blame them, trying to prevent future emotional harm, which just means you're handing out free rent space in your head. Or you could accept that it happened, kick that person out of your life, and judge people better next time. The result would be the same, prevent future emotional harm, but not holding a grudge would make you suffer less. Of course, you may want to hold a grudge as a form of justice, but that comes with the price of subscribing to a daily dose of negative emotions, which is a decision you need to make. Now, not holding grudges does not mean you forgive, not always. You can recognize something negative happened to you, dislike that, use it as motivation to grow while not holding a grudge, and this should be your goal. The energy it takes to maintain a grudge is colossal. Remembering exactly why you need to stay mad or who did you wrong is a waste of energy. Being obsessed with the past is just unhelpful. The past does not exist, the future neither, but thinking about it can make a change. You have an objective, which is not suffering, so when you find yourself on memory lane, thinking about the negative things that happened to you, make a U-turn back to the present. Or better yet, plan the next anime you want to watch, or decide what's your next goal. Because really, if you can't change the past, you might as well focus on something that makes you smile. And remember, your happiness depends on how you react to the world, not the way around.